Welcome to our executive interview series at the FedScoop Federal Forum, sponsored by Workday. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and we're here with Allen Hill, Chief Information Officer at the Federal Communications Commission. Allen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
First, I'd like to get your sense for how would you rate the HR management systems at most federal agencies to actually manage and support the workforce skills they need and that workers expect?
I've been at FCC for just over 2 years now, and previous to that I was at GSA, and prior to that I was at Education. And so that's about an 11-year span that I have been in the federal side of the government. I also come from Air Force, retired Air Force. And I'll say there's a lot of opportunity to improve. Our HR systems that are out there today are no different than our systems are out there today. There's a lot of modernization that's necessary. And we need to get our HR systems to where they're really supporting today's workforce needs. And to do that, I think we need to change and do a more consolidated approach of how we're delivering HR so there's consistency. And it enables the employees to kind of focus in on what they need to do to be workforce ready. And that's extremely important. Our investments and how we've been doing these things have been agency to agency. I'd like to see a lot more consolidated approach, a shared service approach, because we're all playing on the same rules in terms of federal agencies of what we have to do. And so I'd like to see a more shared service approach to be able to do that.
And then next, what are some examples of how modern HR management systems could really help agencies manage employee performance more effectively?
I love that question. I'm very much about a performance-based approach and how the workforce work. And an employee needs the ability to have insight to where there are skill challenges, I should say, and so how that can help influence them and move them to become better performance in that areas, and then where they have their strengths and where they can be used. I like using example. Gallup has this. It's called the CliftonStrengths, and it focuses on 34 key areas of a person's personality and what their tendencies to do. And it shows where your strengths are, but then where there's opportunity where you can focus on other areas to improve. Using that kind of system to be able to make the best out of our people, help them not only develop their vertical capabilities of what they do, but also horizontal, those other skills that are necessary. I used an example before where you have an engineer talking to a project manager. They don't talk the same language. So helping them to understand those one-on-one type courses to help them improve so they have better communication, work together is also helpful. It helps us work together more seamlessly and better productivity. And from a skills perspective, you don't have that single pane of glass in today's HR environment to be able to see that. It's very manual in nature. Having something that will be automated, AI interface to help engage the person and adapt to what the person's need. There are a lot of tools out there that do that today. Having something like that in our workforce would be extremely helpful to bring the best out of our federal employees.
Finally, Alan, I'd like to ask, how can federal agency leaders leverage things like real-time data and sentiment analysis within a talent management system to really develop better functioning teams within their organizations?
I love that question, particularly from the perspective, if I understand how the employees are feeling about something, it helps me adjust the approach of management. It also helps me recognize when there are a lack of understanding communication issues too. So being able to see, like, if employees I'm not quite understanding the vision, and so you see that resonating, that tells me maybe I need to communicate better or communicate more. Also, it gives me insight to where areas of concern that I can sit there and be focused on. Sometimes staff don't necessarily speak up, particularly those introverts. And so by having a means to do that in a way to get the information and be able to have that insight helps me to adjust my leadership style and my team's approach, my leadership team's approach to how we engage the staff to get a much more productive federal workforce.
Well, Allen Hill, thank you so much for joining us here and sharing your insights with us at the FedScoop Federal Forum.
Thank you for having me.